of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. Translated by Daisy Rockwell. Part 2. Sunlight. Chaps. Lovers adore romance. Bigots love weapons. Butterflies love canes. Tricksters love the government. You and me love barfi and laddu. And newspapers love masala. That's why you'll see their pages stuffed with crime and the bazaar full of crooks fooling customers. Theft, robbery, Neeta, December 16, Jessica Lal, Hawala, Harshad Mehta, Shobraj cheating Zenat Aman, beat up Kapoor Shapoor's heat up. In a world of the right to do this and the right to do that, newspapers also have the right to dislike the farmer suicides and deem them beneath their notice, nor are they sufficiently fond of the beatings of Adivasi forest dwellers that they should deign to turn their eyes that way. So their pages are a reflection of the latest shiny objects that attract their attention. Some news items are plastered all over and specially up front, whilst others are swept into the corners like tiny insects. In the court, there was a hearing about how one goat had snuck into the grazing area of another for a munch, and there was another case in which it was discussed whether or not, in the age of rising nationalism, a person might remain seated in their wheelchair during a national anthem. The press is free to choose who gets space where, and which stories shall be graced with pictures. KK decided he would give the Rosie tragedy its due place by writing an article, and he was lucky to get space on a page. Thank God for small mercies. Whoever happened to cast a glance there would have found out that there was one Rosie Hijra who had laid down capital and created a charity organization for her people. She had run away from the Anjuman-e-Islam orphanage to the Langar Khana at the Gurudwara, and from there she had reached the home of a Christian missionary, who had educated her a bit, and when she grew up she had become master of her own livelihood, sewing, embroidery, making all sorts of handicrafts, preparing jam, jelly, chutney, sending tiffins for workers. Such was the work she did. She had bought a flat near the lake and rented it out. When the inspector arrived there he found a lock on the door, and when he encountered the lock again 2 days later, he broke it and entered. Sheila or Shakila and her boyfriend, with the black slicked back hair, were caught outside the house, preparing to take a long vacation somewhere, and Rosie was found inside, stuffed into the box portion of the box bed. In the newspaper, it said that Rosie had wanted to get rid of her tenants and live there herself, and a dispute had arisen over this. First, Sheila Shakila had asked for some time. Then she said she was willing to pay more rent. Then she had expressed a desire to purchase the flat. Then she had brought in her boyfriend. Then they had started trading instilts, and Sheila Shakila and partner had said the same thing Inspector Bhonde had said. That is, that you have been taken in by that faker. This person has no proper papers or any such. We were cheated. We had no idea she was a fake. First she came as a woman, then she started coming as a man. When the criminals and the police both fully agreed there was no reason to get involved with a faker, the issue was dropped for some time. We are decent people. This is a neighborhood of decent people. Ask anyone if we have ever caused a disturbance. We had a faucet installed in this house. We built that wall with the neighbor's permission. They are good people. The boy works in an electric shop. The mother gives us coriander, mint, green chilies. She grows them in pots. Once they even grew aubergines. If we didn't get a bit of cover from the wall, then anyone could peep in. When he goes to work, why would I want everyone to walk by and see in while I'm alone? The ceiling was also leaking. We spent thousands of rupees. We even coated it with waterproof paint. But she never lifted a finger. We told her, whatever happens, we won't drag you into illegal. Now, even though we could put you inside for the crime of imposturing, you're not like the rest of your people, clapping, vulgar dancing, and singing. You don't do all that. We rented a house from you. We'll acknowledge that. You come from time to time. You may stay with us then. Look at this. We put up walls around the veranda and created a space. You can live with us. We gave her permission. Otherwise, who would want her to live here? Respectable families stay around here. We have already paid. She had told us she was going home for a long time. That's probably why you can't find her. But she was found in the box. In the iron mortar in the kitchen, they found a pestle covered with the same blood that splattered the wall like Pan's spit, stuffed in with some shards of shattered rotting skull. One more shape for the shapeshifter. Bondi did not say. The newspaper said she had been a respectable hijra whose tenants were trying to get her to sign papers declaring them the owners of the house, to promise to leave the place to them upon her death, and they hoped maybe she would go away and never come back. But Rosie had no desire to sign the papers, nor was she in any hurry to die. So they had whacked her with the pestle, and then whatever happened, happened. KK wrote all sorts of things in the article about equal human rights under the Constitution, and how finally these days you could declare yourself third gender, and you too had a right, but in reality it happened rarely, and social acceptance was even rarer. The editor considered this bit useless from the perspective of reader interest, and told him he could write a long article about it and for academic journal. The reader would get bored of the story if he took it too far. So that was it. That was as much as anyone read of the tale. End of story. Nowhere was it recorded that they had requested an identification, nor that Amma had again said, "Come on, let's go," meaning this time to the morgue. The Rosie's corpse, head covered with a sheet, 2 feet sticking out, a shapeless form with a toe tag bearing the corpse number, a price tag, cheap. Chapter 77. Fog spread before Betty's eyes. All the longings in the entire world, all the grief of separation, all the memories, resentments, deprivations, joys rose silently from the person lying before them and evaporated into smoke. Betty felt tearful, as though the corpse that lay before them was not Rosie's, but her own. We'll all end up like this. We'll all go like this, look like this. What will become of our beauty, and what will be our price tag? Rosie's feet were as green as the lake had been that night, blotchy, protruding from beneath the sheet. She was loosely sewn up in it, so it looked swollen, as if what lay beneath it was bloated. Had Rosie's stomach become distended, swollen, burst, spreading ooze on the covering fabric? The blood in all the limbs must have turned to pus and was seeping out, breaking through like a flood. Amma wanted to see the face. "When sir says so, then," said the attendant. Ma paid no attention, no heed, and pulled aside the sheet. Rosie's hands were stitched up, rotten branches of a rotten tree, like the legs. "Don't touch," said Beatty, trying to stop her, as if they would start dripping like pressed peats. "Let sir come, please," admonished the attendant lethargically. Amma touched lightly. KK gently placed his own hand on hers, either to stop her or support her. Who knows? The sheet had become crooked. Betty stood on tiptoe as though preparing to flee. Rosie had already decayed. The sheet was redolent with the stench of death, mingled with the acrid fumes of formaldehyde. The digestive juices that dissolved the foods and such inside the body were now dissolving Rosie. Since they had nothing else to consume, they were fermenting her morsels, a festive feast that continued on in Rosie's entrails. The heart had stilled its pumping. The blood had congealed in the hanging parts which had turned rotten, swollen, repulsive. The pus had burst through the skin and begun to ooze, like when you roast an aubergine to make bharta. Sir arrived, pressured by Keke's card. Cover the face, he scolded the attendant. Push back those hideous eyelids, thought Betty as she clenched shut her eyes. Rosie, said Ma calmly, as though to confirm identification, to recognize. Open that mouth that has been silenced. Betty wished desperately, seeing one glimpse of the congealed ooze from Rosie's nose, which was either blood or worms that had not survived. Hospitals and morgues are in a hurry to extricate themselves from unclaimed, unidentified corpses with no future, no past, provided that people like KK and Ma don't see them. Why wasn't Rosie washed? Scolded Amma. Straighten the sheet, Sir rebuked again. When the attendant jerked the sheet to straighten it, it slipped further. A putrid stench rose in the room as Rosie's naked body emerged, covered in waxen skin which had shrunk and begun to crack and was full of deep green, blue, dark red stitches, splotches, and blotches. Here and there the cracks were sewn and filled with embalming masala, artistry, a curiosity, a monstrosity. And those breasts or boils? And was that a penis at half mast? They called it rigor mortis. When a bygone body stiffens like that, near the scrotum the penis goes wooden. Boils bulge. Why is the body unclothed? Amma scolded, looking pleadingly into Keke's eyes. Sir looked a bit flustered. The body almost looked as though it were clothed in oozing chemicals, blood, scurfy wounds, stitches, and hues and rotting shapes that covered it. As in the home of a prominent colonial gentleman on the great festival of Christmas, when a large animal is roasted whole and dressed with delicacies, soaked in chutney, pasted in batter, filled with colorful dried fruits and nuts, sprinkled with garlic, ginger, petal leaf, and set out fully decorated at the great table, spice and sauce as attire, the fork and knife neatly arranged on a napkin nearby. Rosie bequeathed her diseased body to the hospital for medical research, Ma announced, and it was no less than a legal bequest. This was Rosie's last rite. Religious rites were thus absent. Chapter 78. The cane bellows and roars, then stills. Breath rises, falls, then conies to a stop. Eyes stare aghast, then dry up. One dies, another becomes lifeless. When lightning zaps a tree, it snaps like a straw. As a dust storm abates, thatch cracks. When a song is lost, the throat is reduced to coughing. Melody is important, whether love, affection, friendship, or madness or no. There should always be a melody in one's heart that plays throughout life. That's why in Sara Rai's story, P. Sundaram is distraught when he loses the thread of the melody. The return of history. Ma lay lifeless, began to cough, lost the melody, this time in Betty's home. In which breeze did the microbes come a buzzing? Do you know? The unclaimed just fester there, admonished Buddy's doctor. Who took Margie to such a place? She was bound to come down with some type of allergy. Coughing took the place of melody in her throat. My Ma forgot how to speak. Move her frame ever so slightly, and a dry crackling cough slumped her over. Emptiness echoes and is mistaken for a cough. Betty has to help her straighten up, and each time she does, Ma's grown a little smaller. Small, smaller, much, much smaller. as though she intends to dig a tiny chink in some border and come out on the other side. In the morning, when Betty seated her by the blackboard, the two looked to be about the same length and width, because size has no relation to actual measurements. If a banyan is the size of a bela bush, it's tiny. If a butterfly is the size same as a crow, it looks huge. Ma sat vacant, and the bird, seeing the entire family drowned in pity for her, felt moved by pity herself. Observing this distraught woman bent over, smaller than herself, she would come and sit on the tree branch and sing, then stop, then sing again, as though she were reminding Ma, Ma, this one is your melody. Come on, don't you recognize it? Here it is. Ma must have been abstracted, lost, besieged by stories that jostled, knocked, thronged together inside her. Ma swallowed whatever Beatty put in her mouth, and started coughing every time, as though something might fly out, breaking her samadhi. There was a light chill in the air, and Beatty, seated on the balcony, wrapped Ma carefully in a light shawl to guard against the cool morning. All of Beatty's love, all her Shravan Kumarness, burbled up in a flood as she thought about how Rosie was not here now to take Ma downstairs for a stroll. How tragic Ma looks! And if I didn't think of it, it wouldn't even occur to her that it's time to eat now, time to get dressed. She who had shriveled up in a corner on seeing Ma happy and busy with Rosie, and the others now re-emerged as important and necessary to Ma. The worm she had become crawled into a corner and died with Rosie. Now Betty was a soft, velvety sunshine, spreading out warm like a shawl over Ma to protect her from the coming chill, softly cozying her. As Betty became sunlight, she began to feel powerful, and one day she even sympathized with Keke's desire, and found she desired him herself. So much so that when the two of them went out together to submit an article, they stopped on the way back at one of their favorite ruins, a place seldom visited, because no one likes the jungle if there is no McDonald's or Haldiram's nearby. The two of them rekindled their romance in the dark on the bough of a mango tree that reached all the way to the ground. It could have been dangerous, not because of snakes or tigers, but as has become more prevalent, humans. Yet Betty had a newfound strength, and because of this, she took the risk. Love for others also bubbled up as compassion. The door of her home opened wider than it had before. If someone relapses after getting well and doing fine, near and dear ones feel specially anxious. They show up in a panic, wondering how they themselves can bear to breathe without first ensuring the other can. And brigades began appearing in search of the scattered crumbs of snacks and tea. Sid and the rest of the family, servants, friends, battalions of community members began showing up at Beatty's and suggesting remedies. Try this. This will make her feel better. Remedies were suggested from far off lands as well. Via Bahu. Give her chamomile tea. It's soothing and everything also gets messed up with gas. Give her mint. It will settle her stomach and her coughing too. And half a sleeping pill is fine at her age. She'll get better if she sleeps well. The guard's daughter-in-law was from somewhere in the mountains. She brought a type of oil and said, let me go to her. Let me massage her head with it. It will draw out the poison that's got inside. There was a green-colored oil in the bottle, and the stalk floating in the oil looked sort of like a centipede, which the daughter-in-law said was a worm that's found in those parts and dropped live into the oil, and its essence keeps oozing out, which has immediate health benefits. The doctor wanted to run tests in the hospital to see first if all the parameters were in place, after which they could think about other tests. What he said was that uncommon viruses had been dormant in the ice for eons, and they were now making their way into the world with the melting of the ice. And that coughing, diarrhea, weakness were no longer the simple illnesses they had been once, when they would quickly go away on their own. They had actually become rather difficult to cure. Let's check her into the hospital and put her under observation and come up with some solutions. Global warming is what's behind it. The family was not, at least for the time being, willing to take Ma back to the hospital, as though Rosie had gone but she had left her vote behind. Sid said bring in a house doctor, but no one agreed with that either. There was no pain, no dizziness, no shortness of breath, no sweating. The cough was also improving, and they were hardly GPs that they could just diagnose the whole thing. They had already seen that every doctor needed the other ones. Each had to have their own separate test to decide that it's not this, not that, and finally get to what it is. Rosie would have said, no, no one's taking Baji to the hospital. They kill people there instead of helping them to live. But they also don't let them die because that would give them a bad record. You just tell me, and I'll come running to look after her. I don't need a passport to come. But Rosie was gone, and with her, her spirit. Amma just sat quietly or coughed, and the family became the quilt that wrapped her, the blanket that covered her, her magic carpet, her cane, her every support. The family understands all, since time immemorial. Before, too, they had understood that when her husband had departed, Ma too had departed, and they had worked to pull her back, and now again they were busily pulling her back because Ma had departed again. No one says it happened because Rosie left. Bade and Bahu believe that it's because Ma left their home, that she is now exhausted and sort of finished. And Beti believes that it happened when Ma relinquished her care to others. The family doesn't give up its ways, nor does it stop seeing itself as the great guardian of all. Families love a half dead bird. If that's what you are, you'll get endless love and sympathy. And the one who made you half dead will face the family's wrath. How they love to help, puffing up the disrepute wings of the bird. Come, lean on us, move. Slowly. Try to fly. Try a bit more. We are right here, holding you, supporting you. Don't worry. Yes, yes. Open your wings a bit. Careful. Slowly. No, no, not too much. No, no. Absolutely never without our help. You'll fall. You'll get trampled. How could they know that something else also goes on in families? In their self gratifying, super sympathetic worry, they do whatever she says, thinking it's charity, and they humor her kindly at its last phase of her life, little realizing that she'll get them to do things they could never imagine in their wildest dreams. 29. Hearing a sound at the open door, Betty stood up in shock. Her brother stood before her, she before he, their eyes locked, as though there's you and me and no one else. The earth, gaze, air, mind, body, stirred as though all was turned fluid, and splash, bubble, melt, puddle, melt, puddle. A masterful mien hung over Buddy's face like a curtain, a way to hide anxiety and also wipe away the sweat. Raza Master had made costumes from cloth, but this one was woven from demeanor. Amma was seated on the balcony, cloaked in stillness. Buddy went straight over to her. Come along, he commanded. If you sit outside, your health is bound to get worse. Ma slowly lifted her head. She looked at Buddy, looked at Bahu, who had come in behind him, looked at Beti standing behind them, looked at the open door behind her, over to where the neighbor's shaggy dog had started barking with joy at making eye contact with Ma. You left me behind, said Amma. Bahu leaned over to touch her feet. What are you talking about, Amma? You left us. But enough is enough. Now come along. Let's go now. Let's go now, Amma repeated vacantly. She's had her outing. Ma's had her chance to try out his crazy quilt. Time to return to comfort, said Bahu. She's had her little flirtation with weirdo lifestyles. Time for her to return. Where else could she find what she gets at our home? Sooner or later, she has to return to us. Overseas Son has also called to say, please look after yourself. Please don't neglect yourself. Hire a nurse and tell her all of Dadi's needs. That she gets constipated. Dissolve half a spoon of isabgol and give it to her with every meal. And Nibicard in the morning. And I'm sending fix from here via colleague. And also a foot massager that you should also have Dadi use. Okay? At which one remembers Paul Zacaria's story, if one has read it, where another overseas son thought of all the tiny ways in which his elderly ma, lying alone, needed to be cared for. This overseas son explained everything in a letter to the lady who responded to his advertisement for a nurse post after telling her about the amenities, salary, and so on. All the rest of his siblings were stationed about the globe, and he wrote, I have taken on the responsibility of darling Amma, and I come with my family to see her once every 2 years. So, nurse, you will stay with her. You will wake Ma in soft voice at 9 a.m., not by shaking her, by patting her palms lightly and her forehead. If she awakes and recognizes you, smile sweetly. If she doesn't recognize you, smile and remind her who you are. Then raise the head of the bed and sit her up with a pillow to lean on. Pull her body forward slightly and massage her back and shoulders softly but thoroughly. Then, with Susamma's help, another character in the story, seat her on the commode, but smile the whole time, because when Amma gets up, she should feel good cheer and affection. This is good for her health, both mental and physical. When Ma is on the commode, then, nurse, you should keep patting both her hands or her back with one hand. At 9:20, give Ma a sponge bath. Continue to talk to her throughout all this on sweet topics. Make a connection with happy experiences in your life or about us, children, that is, Ma's children, or about our, and continue to say sweet things. In short, there are instructions for the future nurse for every moment. When Ma goes to sleep, when she awakes, in bed, on the potty, in the wheelchair, everywhere. Such detailed instructions, such as to position her wheelchair on the balcony in the evening when the sun begins to set, and turn her face towards the horizon and lock the wheels and put down the bar so she won't slump forward, and then leave her there alone. Allow her to enjoy the pleasure of solitude. Alert to the smallest details, even when far away across the seven seas. And then Paul writes that the son in the story instructed that at night, at 9:30 p.m., to be precise, you should lay Ma down and look into her eyes and say, good night, sweet dreams, and see if she smiles or not, and give her an affectionate kiss on the head, another on the cheek, and another on the lips on behalf of her six, her sons and daughters, and say to her, my dear Ammachi. And thus it seems that truly the nurse becomes a medium, and it's the children who are giving her their love. Having set all these conditions, the son in the story ended his letter thus: if you agree to these terms, we will interview for the position of nurse to our mother. But no one had read Zachariah and this family. Yet sons are sons, whether they are in the stories or outside of them. So Bari's wife said, look how much he thinks of Dadi, even when he is far away, and of me too, and how my life shouldn't just be spent in caring for Ma and the home. and he makes sure to leave his work in the middle of every other day and call me, even from over there. He's doing all these things so that I never feel truly alone. Pack her things, were his first words to Betty after eons, and they were words of command. Was it any wonder she minded? Let her health stabilize first. I'll go, Ma said softly. Why do mothers always think of their sons' homes when they're dying? Krishna Sopti showed us this in her novella Listen, Girl. Ma began to cough, resting her cane on the floor, bending over it. Let's go inside, said Betty. Ma lifted her cane, coughing, coughing, trembling, trembling, and her head. When she lifted her cane, it was like a long, thin matchstick that took the spark from the redness of setting sun to light the candles hanging in the shade of the nearby tree. Soft red flickers swung about. Ma rested her cane upon a branch, as though it was to a branch of the same tree. The blackbird hopped up alone at this glad tiding. The sun was moving upwards as the bird perched upon the cane branch before Ma and turned black her eyes red, chirping its long tweet, tweet, tweet. It tried its best to help the melody return to Ma's voice. Over the border, said Amma. For some reason, everyone fell silent so they could hear the song of Amma and the bird. The whistling one, the love in separation lament, the cry for meeting, that one. The blackbird whistles before a small woman. Wherever it may be, it is before this tree or this bush, in this light and this moment. Then the bird flew away, and Ma began to whistle as though she were not in the bustling home of a populous city, but in the wilderness, in a desert, where a whistle echoes in the void and slowly dies away. Chapter 80. Thud. A tear falls like a rock, or a drop of rain. There's so much one hasn't an inkling about, yet one doesn't even believe that truth. Everyone running after the cause of this and the reason for that. One body has many different lives. If it weren't so, could a great heavy Taj Mahal of solid rock waft in the breeze like a feather? A rock floats up like a sheet of paper. A droplet falls like a rock. A rock is only a rock as long as it's a rock. Heavy, solid, unmoving, unshaking. A breath rises, and the rock trembles. Then it turns to paper and floats. The paper flaps, and a story flies upon it, new and fresh. The red glow of the sunset spreads over the frontier like words flowing from a pen. The frontier, which is the border of another border, beyond the border. There is sand at the border, as in a desert. The sand awaits, paused. The vigil of the sand, the arrested desert. That's the border. Some on one side, the rest on the other. This side or that side. Commerce boundless. Dramatic, but this can be understood. There are answers. Wherever I am, there I am. Wherever you are, there you are. Over there, you, me, and over here, me, you, waiting for these to meet. If they do, a romantic meeting, body, mind, plunge into sand, sinking. The growing smaller woman whistles like the wind in the desert that flows without colliding with anything, and slowly the layers of sand fly up, and forms meditating in samadhi are revealed. Chapter 81. Like a game where the children take running leaps, and right at that moment the word passport jumps in, and everyone nearly falls over. Ma is asking Bari for a passport, not to go to his house. She's cooking up a plan to go elsewhere. Everyone in shock. Ah, well, she's at the end of her life. They justify it to themselves. Let her have her dreams and fulfill them. It's good she's interested in doing something. Otherwise, we feared she would just lie down again like last time. We'll take her on a trip. Pakistan. When Amma said it, everyone thought they hadn't heard right, and no one even paid attention. Even at this age, desire is desire. And why should anyone die without giving it a shot? They go to Kashmir, Goa, Kerala. If she wants abroad, then try Singapore or Shanghai. When Sid's planning his events there, he'll take her along. When would his boundless group of friends come in more handy? If she wants, we could even arrange for Sri Lanka or Mauritius. Jumman went there too. The walls of his hotel were made of glass and the sea flowed about on all sides. Yes, one can surely dream of London, Paris, New York, where everyone nowadays has some child or other who's gone to study or marry. But one must take age into consideration when planning a journey. And if you really insist, then come. Let's get up the courage and go to Australia. He's always calling his mom and saying, I'll show you around here. Let Bahu take Ma along. She can travel too. Become foreign returned. Take a trip abroad. Because Pakistan. Pakistan? Pakistan? Why fling Ma into the swirl of the noisy slogans in Krishna Soptis, a Gujarat here, a Gujarat there? And how far Pakistan is? Amma, it's so far. At which Amma got a bit annoyed. It is where it is. We are the ones who are far. Yes, but all the same, if you really have it in you to go that far, then why not Australia? It will also be home. But Pakistan? Who goes to Pakistan? Rosie, Amma's response. What does this have to do with Rosie? Everyone shrieks, and they are all startled at one another's shrieks and jump. This is what you call an obsession or spirit possession. Rosie had to go. She's gone. But she didn't take the chironji. So what? I'll take it. Bade, Bahu, Kichalu Taya, Dr. Mirasi, KK, Beti. Everyone jumped and bellowed and then fell silent and began to think. So what is to be done? Bade talked to someone and got Ma's passport made. Bahu said, let her feel happy. Sometimes it's enough just to make a plan. Then you don't need to go. Beti analyzed the matter compassionately and open-mindedly and decided that whatever one may feel personally about Rosie, after all, she always stood steadfastly by Ma. And if now Ma wants to do this in return, to deliver the chironji to someone for Rosie, then I will absolutely support her. This is the LGBT age, and I am no reactionary. Shall I come along? KK gave Betty a surreptitious punch. What harm if we take a trip, with Auntie providing the excuse? We have been planning to go for ages with a peace group, he said. Amma was sitting there too, but as though indifferent, unaware, displeased with everyone. For her birthday party, KK and Buddy were both there, saying to one another, have another drink. What can I get you? Have another drink, Buddy said to KK on Amma's 80th birthday at the officers' club. Brandy, Auntie? Asked KK, seeing her subdued look. But Betty motioned for him to be quiet. You. Ma lifted her cane and pointed it towards Betty. You will be the one to go with me. It was an order. Let's go now. Ma stood up, more or less right in the middle of the party, and turned her face away from everyone. There was a slight chill in the air with winter coming, and she shivered. but she allowed the shawl Bahu had wrapped about her to slip unceremoniously to the ground, as though she had removed all her layers, one by one: wife, mother, aunt, this, that. Now at last she was simply herself, laid bare, apart, her own, untouched by the thoughts and concerns of any other. At 80, Ma had turned selfish. Chapter 82. It so often seems as though preparations take an eternity, and yet the outcome appears finished even before one starts. For example, exams, speeches, life, dinner, childhood, Ma falling, then rising again, and to a whole new beat, contrary to the expectations of all, emerging beyond her husband, then beyond Rosie, then yet another new border. India and Pakistan play games. One says it's cricket, let them come. The other says it's their singer, don't let them sing. This one says our fishermen are sitting about catching fish over there, drown them. That one says he was in the army before, now he's a spy, skin him. And amidst all this, my turn, no, mine, no, mine. Visas are granted or not granted. The diplomats are such deities. They can sometimes finish the game with no preparation at all, and sometimes they keep hitting sixes and losing anyway. Bahu had gone to Rashtrapati Bhavan for a dinner, all dressed up. All sorts of ambassadors were to be present. So she wore formal black pants with a cream top and black jacket from Australia, not with Reeboks, but high-heeled Christian Libonis bought at the imported shoe shop, a pearl necklace, a brooch flashing with diamonds, and on her wrist a sparkling watch worked into a bangle. Today she was capable of anything she could get anything done. And look, she said to Bari, that girl was my yoga student. She is the daughter of the Pakistani ambassador. You're welcome in our country whenever you wish, the ambassador said. You have taught my daughter. See, Bahu was head over heels with her own outfit. The very next day, Sid went to the embassy to get forms, etc., and fill them out every which way, and you sign. It's fine. Please, the official said. So Sid signed for Granny and for himself as well, and also for his aunt. In the where you plan to visit portion, he filled in what he could remember. Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad, where else? When a country divides, enmity jostles amity, and visas and borders depend on the mood, be it slighted, delighted, even far-sighted, or meditative, in a state of samadhi. Bari came as far as Wagha, dividing his attention between Ma and Beti as though he himself were a type of border, slighted, delighted, far-sighted, entranced, in a trance, samadhist. End of part 2.